All right, Brandon Horoho. Hopefully, I got that correct. Welcome to the Wolf and Iron podcast. Great to have you here, man.
Hey man, great to be here too, man.
That's an unusual last name. Do you know the origins or anything like where it comes from?
Yeah, definitely. It's pretty wild. It's the last thing most people expect, but it's an old Irish name.
Oh, Irish. Okay.
Yeah, so it's funny because I do almost all of my communication online over email or over the phone or through like Instagram, and
Yeah.
when I finally meet someone like face to face, they're like, "Dude, I thought you were going to be like Spanish or
Native American,
Korean or
something.
Japanese."
Yeah. Yeah.
But
No.
it's actually a really old Irish name, and it means maker of the horns.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
That's pretty awesome. I really dig last names. I'd love to hear about that, and it's kind of interesting to dig back into our history. So Yarborough, I don't know what it technically means now. I think the last as far as Yarborough is my last name, it meant like people of the earthen fortress, which could be cool, but it also kind of sounds like a hobbit. So I don't really know. But if you go back far enough, there are translations of it that mean people of the spears, which sounds pretty badass. So I like to go with that one. So yeah, I think it's cool because we all have something in our lineage that's just like, man, like people have done awesome stuff up to this point in my life. And then, and we get to continue that or not continue that. But when we're talking about things like, starting a new business or helping a business to succeed or venturing out on some kind of new endeavor and taking risk, like I think it's helpful sometimes to see that like our past are not too separated from what we can do today, being adventurous
Mhm.
type of guys. And so we're going to be talking about Montana Knife Company and your role in that. So just give us an update on who you are, kind of what you do for
Mhm.
Montana, and kind of how you got started there.
Awesome. So obviously my name is Brandon, and so I'm the co-owner of Montana Knife Company. I'm what I like to say, like the back end half.
Okay.
So I handle all of the marketing, a lot of the e-com, email, text message, branding, apparel, pretty much, take as much pressure as I can off of Josh right now. So Josh can just focus on what he does best, which is manufacturing one of the best knives in America. And then on top of that, he's also just a PR genius too. So he's just really good at networking and, getting in front of people too. So it's a really cool combo that we have right now between Josh and I. And just going to give you a little like backstory of the company. Josh started making knives when he was 11 years old. And then he became a journeyman at age 16 and became a master bladesmith at the age of 19, which is, it's always weird to say, but he's the youngest person to ever achieve that level of master bladesmith.
Yeah.
Which is insane. He did it at the age of 19. He's like 41 now. So he's been a master bladesmith for 20 years, almost 22 years. And it's funny when you ask him that, he's like, it's so weird because he's like, I sucked back when I was 19. he's like, there needs to be another level of a master bladesmith. I'm always trying to poke him to like, I think you need
Just come up with something.
Yeah, just come up with something.
I don't know what it would be.
Yeah. So, but then, he had the foresight at the age of 19 to actually trademark the name Montana Knife Company and buy the URL, which is just insane. This is, early 2000s.
Mm-hmm.
And then during like, in his 20s and stuff like that, he was just, this incredible knife maker in all the magazines, huge on all the forums, selling all these like crazy knives. And then, he never really had the chance to kick off Montana Knife Company. And then life happens, he got married, had 4 kids, had to like, the economy crashed in 2008. No one's buying, $10,000 knives in 2008.
Right.
So he actually went and became a lineman with Montana State. And then from there, he just always had this idea of like, let's do Montana Knife Company, let's do Montana Knife Company. And then recently, just 2.5 years ago, when I met him, he was actually going to start back up his custom work. And then that's where I came in. Someone mentioned my name and like my skills, and was like, I'll come down. We'll just kind of like, have a fun day of forging, and we'll shoot some photos and stuff like that. And, we're talking, and he's like, hey, I've always wanted to do this Montana Knife Company idea.
Yeah.
And he had this box of knives literally sitting on his bench, unfinished knives. And I was like, I was like, there's something there. There's
Yeah.
definitely something there. And, he's like, I know how to make them. I just don't know how to get them online and do all the e-com. And I was like, I know a guy. Let's so it started there. And that was, as wild as it sounds, that was only the spring of 2020.
Wow.
I remember because like we pretty much launched the company during the lockdowns.
Yeah, that's had to be really strange, like to not know, like, are people even paying attention to this? Is this something that people are going to want? So how did that go?
So it was pretty, to some people, it seems like we just blew up overnight.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, in general scale, I mean, in 2 years, where we are today, that's like a rapid growth.
Yeah.
But, it took a bit. It took a bit to figure out, because like during the pandemic, we automatically saw like, okay, ports are getting shut down, supply chains are getting shut down. Like, if we're going to do it, we have to do it American made.
Mm-hmm.
And that was his goal the entire time. I was like, this is perfect timing. But what also we didn't foresee was all the supply shortages to make the things, so steel became very hard to buy, and with our style marketing and like me just kind of like coming in and just like, here's 15 years of marketing experience. Let's just blow this company up as fast as possible.
Right.
We quickly grew out of our middlemen that we were buying steel from, so we were able to, when we started the company, we were just being like, we'll just go to Tom and buy a couple sheets of steel and make some knives. And then soon enough, Tom was like, you're buying too much. You have to go to the mill, which is awesome because it cut down our price. But the issue is that now, when we place an order for steel straight from the mill, now those giant sheets of steel don't become a knife until about like 16 months.
Wow.
So now we have a very long like turnaround just because of all the different processes that our knives go through before they even come to our shop for us to hand finish.
Yeah. Yeah. And we experienced some of that as well. So for those who don't know, my other business is Rustic in Maine. We make wedding rings out of historic woods and other unique materials. And so we started back in 2016 and we had a pretty, not same as you, not an overnight success, but a pretty straight up trajectory. And then 2020 hit and we actually had a really good year in 2020, but it was really hard getting a lot of the things that we're used to using, right? Like in terms of the materials that we use, sandpaper and glues and various other things we use in our process. And so we kind of realized that, man, like we need to have either alternatives for these things, or we need to have kind of like a storage, like a stockpile of these things. So that's kind of how we approach it now, to be a month or two ahead of a lot of those things. Cause, it is. It posed some challenges, not to mention the fact that we kind of split a lot of our business into various other houses because everybody they were like, oh, you can't be in the same building at the same time. So we're like, all right, well, everybody just work from your garage. We'll go back to the old school days. And we did that with a lot of coordination and stuff. So I say that because, there's always it'll be better to start this thing or kick this thing off at some other point when the grass is greener, some other point in the future. But if you keep, delaying and you keep delaying and you keep waiting for that just ideal moment, you're going to miss out on the opportunity to really, learn those lessons that you can learn when that pressure's on, like in an uncomfortable environment. And that's why I think, whether it's a garage startup or whatever it is, we love these stories because people started out doing something in the least ideal conditions and learned what they needed to learn in order to grow into, something, much more successful. And I think that's where every business should begin. And so just as a kind of a lesson or takeaway for the guys listening to this, like that's key. You don't need to have it all figured out or have it all together. If you're going to start your business during a pandemic, start it during a pandemic. Just, if you can't get that idea out of your head, like Josh was, if it's been sticking with you since you were 19 years old, at some point you got to pull the trigger on it,
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you nailed it right there. I mean, I know everyone says like, there's no better time than now, but it really is the truth. And honestly, us starting at that time probably grounded us a little bit better. I mean, we were kind of on our back foot, like we were on the defense the entire first year. I mean, we're still on the defense. I mean, Josh and I are still taking very slow, precautionary steps because we don't know when this is, we don't know what the next 6 months is going to look like.
Yeah.
The economy keeps on changing. I mean, just look at gas prices 3 months ago versus now. We didn't foresee any of that stuff happening. So it honestly, like, I think like you said, like, during these pandemics or like during a recession in 2008, I mean, that's when most people make the greatest progress, is because, a lot of, like, sometimes your competition might be bloated and then they're downsizing while you're gobbling up all the resources and, doing things, especially if you're doing American made. That's what we're seeing right now in kind of like the industry, is that, all the American made, companies for hunting and, firearms and knives and everything, like, those guys are, growing leaps and bounds when the other guys are downsizing.
Yeah. One of the things, guys, that are listening to this or watching this, if you haven't seen the knives from Montana Knife Company, go check them out. I was trying to think about how I say this nicely, because, in one sense, I'm like, they're not flashy designs. It's like, I see this and I'm like, this thing's made to go to work. Like, this is what I would take to the field to get the job done. If I'm hunting, I'm skinning or whatever. And I thought, like, that's I don't know, it's a niche in a sense, but it's also something that's very utilitarian, but it also has a really good form to it. How did Josh, maybe, kind of come up with or how does he come up with, like, the designs that you guys are going to be doing? And that sort of minimalist style that you guys have become known for?
That's a really good question. And, it also leads to, like, one of the like the moments I was most wrong about guessing how this business was going to go too, which is good. Because when Josh launched the company, we launched with one model, and that was the Blackfoot. Mm-hmm. And the idea is like, can we make one knife that can go on any hunt anywhere in the world with any hunter? So, if you're going into Alaska for 2.5 weeks and you're only allowed to take one knife, it's going to be that Blackfoot. It's going to be your, for the detail, it's going to be for skinning, it's going to be for field craft, it's going to be for, if you have to get out of a bind, do it all knife. And, I thought, as a marketer, like, and that's what we wanted to launch with. Like, let's just sell everyone one knife. That's all they need, is just this one knife, this Blackfoot. And, it's kind of wild, because, and then I realized that, like, everyone wants, a bunch of knives, and people started buying multiples. And so then we're like, okay, I guess we do need to, like, or Josh and I both figured out that we need to, like, diversify the line. So the idea was, originally just to be kind of be like the Yeti model. Like, this is the one cooler you need. It's the best on the market. It's tested. Josh put 20 years into that first knife. Like, it's kind of like, when you write your first book, it's, 20 years goes into that first book. Yep. And honestly, that Blackfoot, and our Blackfoot 2.0, like, it is, I mean, that's the only knife you need. That knife has been already on 6 of the 7 continents. I'm still trying to figure out how to get it to Antarctica. That's my goal by the end of the year. I might have a way to do it, but it's field dressed everything from, small, like, pheasant, squirrel, the whole way up to, like, Cape buffalo. And, like, so, it's just a really cool knife. But then, slowly, we started to diversify the portfolio. And, our Blackfoot was already so light. I think it was only like 5 ounces, which is crazy for a knife, as strong and durable as that is. And we kind of got the challenge, like, hey, can you make one lighter? So Josh figured out how to make one, which is the Speed Goat, and that's 1.7 ounces. And it's just an incredibly light knife, and it's sharp, and it holds an edge just forever. And that's the one thing we always, like, we want to be very clear about. We have the best cutting knives. They're not tools. They're not screwdrivers. They're not crowbars, but they hold an edge forever, and they cut. And the reason behind that is just as Josh's, like, edge geometry is set up to just be pretty much like a lightsaber. I mean, and it really is.
Man, that's awesome. No, I love that. And I love the simplicity of that, because a lot of companies, when they come out with something, they're like, all right, we got to have 5 models. They've all got to be different, and, we got to appeal to 3 different demographics. And it's like, that's going to kill that sort of MVP, that initial test of, like, does this even work? Does this model even work? I got a little bit of, you can't really see it here in the camera, but I got some sawdust on me from, I was making a wood comb, basically, before this, but we're not going to run out with, like, hey, here's 3 different models of our comb and, for our beard oils and stuff like that. We're going to have like one, and we're going to have a limited release of it. And we're going to see how it goes. And then we're going to, get some feedback, and then we'll kind of move forward with that and see if anybody wants changes or if they need something else. And I think that's really the way to go. And you guys have, probably with your marketing background and also Josh's experience in the knife world, just kind of saying we're going to keep it small, keep it simple, and kind of grow gradually over time, just makes all the sense in the world. And it shows, I think, a certain kind of confidence in the business rather than like just we've got to attract people to a product. That's a different mindset.
Mm-hmm. So you, again, like, with that C word, that confidence, and that's something that, we always talk about when we do new models and stuff like that. So, it's very rare. Like if you look at, and not that we have not that our competitors, but that, what you just said is like what everyone else does. Mm-hmm. Everyone goes out and they make one knife and they do it in like 30 different colors, 30 different styles, 30 different like metals. And they try to make a knife for everybody. Mm-hmm. And like, our goal is like, no, we're giving you the answer. Like, this is confidence. Like if this knife is good enough to hand to, Cole Kramer, who is one of the most like craziest brown bear and grizzly bear guides in Alaska, if we can hand it to him confidently to take that on a hunt for 18 days, like this is going to do great in the lower 48. Like you guys are safe. And like, this is the only model you need in color. And I think there's something to that. You know what I mean? When, like there's so much research that goes into these knives. And when Josh is designing these knives, like they're meant for a specific purpose, or they're even better, like the one bear tooth knife we have, that's just for fleshing. And honestly, we made that for Cole Kramer. He is the most elite like hunting guide there is. Like he's known for it. He's taken all the black rifle guys hunting. He's taken some of the most famous people hunting, and he kills big brown bear every single year. And he flashes them out. And like he probably has more hours behind a knife than most humans will ever have. And I was like, then Josh is like, we need to make a knife for him. If we make a knife for him, that covers everyone else below. Yeah. And that's what we came out with. So no, and exactly like you said, it's, you almost want to give your customer the answer. I hate going to a website and there's like 1,000 different options when I just need I'm here to buy. I don't just give me the answer. I don't want to have to do a bunch of research on why A is better than B and why B is better than C and C is better than D. Yep. I just want the best. So, and that's the idea. And that's why, our knives are priced the way they are. Like this is the best knife for the job. And then just to kind of touch base too, a lot of people don't really pick their niche. And they don't pick it confidently. And this also goes to trying to make a knife for everyone. Like we're not trying to make a knife for anyone. We're an unapologetically, we're a hunting knife company. Yeah. But our hunting knives can be used for everyday carry and for work and all that stuff. But, it's wild. This industry right now is changing so much where, people are leaving the hunting space, or it's just like a subcategory. Yeah. It's something that, and it drives me nuts because there's you're buying knives from companies who don't even care about the thing that you love. Yeah. Like you're just a subset of a sub market that kind of might be profitable, and they're going to take their best selling knife and put an orange handle on it. They're going to sell it to you as a hunting knife, and they don't even care about you like that. We're learning this in the industry, and it's insane. And it's the same thing in, the tactical knife world. We're seeing the same thing. We're seeing companies leave the tactical knife world because they can't run Facebook ads. So they're just going to abandon their entire tactical community, entire tactical, market because they can't run a Facebook ad, and they're going to turn into a tool company because they can work around the Facebook ads and say that I'm a tool, not a knife. And if you're willing to do that, it just shows that you're not making a product for a customer. You're making a product for a profit.
Yeah, no, that's a great segue there, because one of the things that a lot of guys listening to this may not know, but if they think about it, they'll recognize that they've probably never seen an ad for a knife or a firearm on Facebook or Instagram. You'll see ads for just about everything else under the sun, but even your basic household knife, you're not going to see that. And so that makes marketing, that product a challenge. We even see a little bit of this with Facebook. Some of our rings have historic rifle stocks in them, like wood and stuff like that, or they'll have naturally shed elk antler in them. and
I love
Facebook will
that.
flag that stuff and say, oh, you can't sell rifle stuff, or you can't, just because it has the word in it. You can't sell firearms. You can't sell weapons. You can't sell animal parts, just, it's like, well,
Hmm.
no, this is just elk antler, like literally like on the forest floor, like it was found. We're using it in our rings. And so that's, we kind of deal with that, but you guys basically have to come up with a strategy for how you're going to sell stuff that I think is actually really good, because it means that you're not dependent upon, the typical Facebook ads or the TikTok ads or the whatever ads. You guys are actually having to engineer a true marketing strategy that just isn't ad dependent. And so how has that been from your perspective, kind of coming into this? Because I don't know if you worked with those limitations in previous industries and stuff that you worked with.
Hmm. So no, and again, another great question. And it's wild because, like right now, like our, the biggest thing is Facebook ads, paid traffic and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. Now, how do you do that when you're not allowed to use the number one most resourceful and converting, power tool there is? And,
Yep.
like you have to get crafty. You have to get very crafty, and you have to rely on your product being, amazing word of mouth. That's the one thing that we love. We always say is like our product sells it. Once we get one knife in someone's hand, it usually ends up being, 3 to 4 sales. And then they tell their friends, and then all this stuff too. But, we've sold over like 10,000 knives, and, I think we've had like 4 or 5 returns. Like I've never seen that in the industry.
Yeah.
And most of those returns were buyer's remorse. Probably like their wife was just a little mad they bought another knife.
They bought it on the spur, yeah. Yeah.
Exactly. But if I can give anyone any advice, even if they can run Facebook ads, and Google ads and TikTok ads and all that stuff, try to push it to the point where you have to run them. You know what I mean? Use those at last cause. Start with your community, grow your community, build your community, and focus everything on, own data is what I call it. So pretty much like your email list and your text message list.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, they can turn off our Instagram page. We don't own it. They can turn off our Facebook page. We don't own it. Twitter, all those. But the one thing you will own is like what they used to call in the old world is like your house list. So, that's one thing you can just never, and I don't want to say never, because who knows what policy would ever change down the road, but email and text message, like just get people on there, have a way to directly communicate with each other. And you'll always be successful if you focus on that. And that's where we've been really successful, is just trying to get people to have a direct communication with us. That's beyond just social media.
And that's a dying art, or it's an art that's kind of trying to be revitalized, because Facebook ads have become a lot more expensive. They're not as effective as they used to be, but trying to find marketers, like for our internal marketing team, that really can think outside of the box, and instead of just thinking, oh, we'll run more ads, or we'll run a different type of ads, or we'll do whatever. It's like, no, how do we have a marketing strategy, like from the ground up? If ads didn't exist, how would we do that? And I think that, you probably got your hands full with what you're doing, but all the stuff that you guys are learning, there's probably an opportunity there for that to be, I don't know, that what you're learning and what you guys are doing is very, very valuable to a lot of other companies, even if they're running ads, because, it's difficult. You get dependent on it. And like you said, you don't own it. You don't own the space. You can get flagged at any moment. They might say, hey, sorry, you're too proud to be an American. Boop, you got to go. Or you're selling, there's knives. We don't like that at all. Boom, you got to go. Right. And so, I think that's great. And one of the things that you guys have done really well is getting your knives into the hands, and just the Montana Knife Company brand into the hands of Joe Rogan and a lot of other folks, kind of celebrities and such. Is that part of your strategy? Is that more like on Josh's side? Like, how did you guys come up with that, with that sort of, the piece to your marketing?
No. And that's another huge one. Like if we had to say like, give credit to like the biggest part of our growth, it is getting it into the hands of the right people. And that's something, like Josh did from the beginning, and something that I championed, through too. I mean, our goal is just get the knives in the right hands at the right time. We always say, and it's wild. We always have like celebrities reach out to us and like, hey, can we buy a knife? And our thing is like, hey, the first one's on us. And then for some reason that always just, it comes back tenfold too. And like, especially if you can't run Facebook ads, you have to look at it like that's the way to run an ad, is just giving something up front without any expectations of a return. We never follow up with anyone asking like, hey, did you get that knife? Do you mind posting it? No, it's like, if you don't love it enough to post it, like, we don't want you to post it kind of deal. So that's the biggest thing too, is, it's not just like seeding out your products to your community and to people that, that would respect them, but also like having good enough product that makes it like postable. So yeah, no, it's huge. Everything goes back to kind of like, like the Sorinex crew. I don't know if you know Bert and all those guys.
Sorinex, yeah.
Yeah. So they were like kind of like the first like diving like springboard for us. Nice. They were the first to like back us, and we owe them the world. And like those he helped us get our knives in the right hands, and then it just kind of really slowly spread from there.
Yeah, we had Bert on the podcast several weeks back, and he's just the nicest guy, and just like one of those guys that just wants to give and to do and to help and all that kind of stuff. You just get that from him, and which is really cool. And so I could definitely see him, just being like, hey, I want to just help you guys, whatever we can do. And like you said, when you have a product that other people love as well, that just happens. So that's really cool, man. Mm-hmm. When you were coming into the knife industry, let me back up a little bit. So I wrote a little book several years back called The Guy's Guide to Pocket Knives. So I've been a fan of knives since I was a kid, and wrote a little book about it. And one of the things I realized was that, man, like, knives have been around forever. There's a lot of brands doing it. And so did you have any hesitation when you were coming on board with Josh? Were you like, dude, the knife market is flooded. How are we going to create, carve out kind of a little section for ourselves? And that'll lead me to some other questions about dealing with competitions, copycats, those kinds of guys. But were there any kind of like initial, like, I don't know if we can really carve out a space for us, or, what was that process like for you, just kind of coming on board and joining this?
Yeah, no. Another good question. Honestly, I never really thought about it as in that way. The opportunity of working with someone who, the backstory was there no matter what. Like, it's something you can't reproduce. You have Josh, started making knives at 11, started making things at 19. There's a master bladesmith behind it. And they were the best knives. They seriously were. So like, I never even looked at it as like, oh man, I wonder if we can, take a slice of the pie or anything like that. It's just like, there's too much good going on here that we just have to kind of try this and push it forward.
Yeah. All right. That makes sense. And that's kind of like typically people who are like risk-taking entrepreneurs, they just sort of kind of go with their gut and they say, I see this is valuable and cool. Other people are going to see that as well. We just got to help them, get it in front of them. How do you guys, I don't know if you guys have experienced this yet. We have a little bit, just dealing with like copycats or, that kind of stuff, people trying to either replicate the style or the name or whatever the case is. Is that something that's jumped up, for you guys yet? And you're trying to have to stand out from the, from the guys who are not you or whatever the case may be?
Mm-hmm. So no, and that's wild. So the crazy thing is, so I came from like the fitness and apparel industry.
Okay.
And everything, there's competition. Everyone's kind of making the same thing, and they're just putting a different brand on it, different name on it, and it's all competition. I mean, the entire industry, used to just be competition, like who can just be in front of everyone else. Mm-hmm. And then I kind of came into the knife, and I've always been in the outdoors. I've always been a hunter, and that was like, I finally here's a product that I actually would be using every single day, and I love, and I could talk about. But the biggest shock about the knife industry is everyone is so friendly. Everyone is hyping everyone up, and it is completely different. Now, don't get me wrong. We've had some people try to get into the knife industry that aren't, I would say, knife makers, and they jacked our style, they copied our style, and it's funny how fast they got weeded out. Like, guys, Montana Knife Company makes one knife in 6 colors. Don't you there's 30,000 colors of G10. There's 30,000 different, combinations of colors. Like, just don't do their 6 colors. Like, come on. So, I mean, it is what it is. We don't say anything. And it's, and we're already like so many years ahead with like how many different models we're coming out with. Like we have stuff like pretty much the next 2 years already done,
Wow.
for new models and stuff like that. So for anyone to even try to like copy Montana Knife Company and try to make literally like a shadow company of ours, like they're just going to be a couple years behind. And that's just how we're kind of like, and honestly, we don't even look at ourselves as, we don't even look at the other knife companies as competition. Our competition is converting people who don't understand what a good knife is to a knife person, or like a knife guy.
Yeah.
Like that's who we focus on. Like our competition is crappy knives, and we want to convert those people into someone who understands like what it means to buy a knife that your grandkids are going to fight over.
Yeah.
Like that was that was like our biggest ethos is we wanted to make a knife that, that could be, that your grandkids fight over, because like, when your grandfather dies, like when my grandfather passed away, the only thing I wanted was his old hunting rifle, a couple of his knives, and his Zippo.
Yep.
It's like, I don't even care about the if there was any money left over or furniture or TVs or houses. I was like, no, I just want those three things,
Yeah.
And that's what we're hoping we're building a knife that like your grandkids are going to fight over. We want the scratches on it. We want it to look like it's been sharpened 100 times. It's starting to get a dip in the edge, and and there's stories in there, and there's probably some elk blood crammed in one of the screws and some hair in the in the handle and stuff like that. So that's our biggest goal. When you start with a goal like that, it makes it easy to make a really good product.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's fantastic. And we have a similar kind of mindset about our rings. And that is that guys come into a lot of guys when they're getting married, they're like, okay, I have to buy a wedding ring. They go to some jewelry store and they're like, they all kind of look the same. They're just mass produced and overpriced. And they don't even know that they could actually have a ring that's made with like custom materials, things that they send in. They'll send in stuff from like Grandpa's wood, Grandpa's barn.
That's cool.
And wood from Grandpa's barn. And then, or any number of things they'll just send to us. And we're like, let's work this into a design and utilize this so that now it becomes a sentimental piece. And when people are asking about their ring, they can tell a kind of a story about their grandfather or whatever is meaningful to them. We have tons of stories like that. And so that's a big part of what we do, recognizing that men are very sentimental. Just like you showed with your grandpa when he passed away, you want these things that remind you of him and a particular kind of connection with him. And I think that, I know that most businesses out there have traded in the true nature of something being handcrafted, American made, sentimental value being passed down to the next generation and all that. They've traded that for just a cheap Chinese product or something made overseas that's going to, come in and fill a need, maybe, but more than that, it's just going to, line somebody's pockets, with money because they got a ridiculous markup on it. And one of the challenges that we, it's not necessarily a big challenge, but one of the things that we definitely feel is that as an American-made brand, the guys who are making our rings are getting like a really good wage. Like we're paying these guys like Americans, right? They're skilled craftsmen doing this stuff, guys and gals. And so that means that the price of our rings have to reflect that. And, and I think that that's something that a lot of people who want to buy something, they're expecting that cheap price, but they don't recognize that reflects a cheap material that doesn't have the heart behind it, doesn't have that American kind of soul behind it. So what has it been like for you to kind of dive into that? Because you said you came from that sort of apparel and sports industry and stuff like that. And now you're doing American made, small business, handcrafted. What are the great things about that? What are some of the challenges about that?
Yeah. And, and it was something I always kind of, I felt guilty about, when I was marketing, stuff that, pretty much like seasonal apparel. Like you only wear it for a couple months and it's kind of out of trend and you throw it away or it wears out or rips and it's not that there's anything wrong with that. I mean, there's definitely a market there. It makes people, feel more confident. It gets them working out, and all that stuff. But, I think that's what really attracted me to Josh and his idea behind Montana Knife Company was like, no, I want to make heirloom stuff and I want to do it from the ground up. And, if you told us, 16 months ago that, we'd have 10 employees right now, I'd be like, you're drunk, go home. Like, this isn't happening. Yeah. And it's wild. Like one of our shop girls just bought a new truck, because of, her working her ass off in the shop. Like, I wish and it's crazy. Like, there isn't a word to describe that type of confidence, or not that type of like, feeling you get, like when like you helped an employee achieve their dreams.
Yeah.
Like, and I'm getting goosebumps now just like thinking about it. And it's cool, man. Like, and I wish more people felt that. And, and it's wild. The one thing that people don't realize is when you're making something here in the United States, like 80% of your workforce is making something. Like, when you're doing something in China, usually you just have an office full of like, accountants and HR and marketing, and then just shipping and receiving. Like, that's the only thing that's in your building. And then obviously product and design, but like, the soft side of the business is 90% of your culture.
Yeah.
But when you're American made, 80% of your business is the hard side of the company. And there's something about that just like, it's just different. It feels different. When the majority of your company is working on making the product,
yeah, it
just hits different. The company culture is different and everything like that. Like, you're not just bitching because you're shipping containers stuck in Seattle. It's
yeah.
like, like we can make as many knives as we can, as hard as we try. That's the point we are now that we're finally caught up on steel, and it's a really cool space to be. It really is. And I really, like, if I could help any American-made companies grow faster, like, I would love to figure out how to do that. And obviously the best thing to do is just honestly just kind of watch what we're doing. That's a beautiful thing about marketing, is we're not doing anything secret in the background.
Yeah. All
of our marketing is, front facing. That's what the idea of marketing is like, we want everyone to see what we're doing. So, and just like, like what you guys are doing, like you have to see let the people see how the sausage is made,
yeah,
good and bad. Our first year of marketing was just me complaining about not having steel. Like, it literally was. And, it was good, but it got people fired up, so when, a shipment of steel hit, like, we had something to be excited about, and we were able to turn those immediately into knives. So.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And one of the things that's interesting too about that American made, like actually doing production in your shop and being a part of that, is that, and I'm sure you guys experienced this, is that when a customer is like, they just love the product that they got, they love the knife, or in our case, they love the ring or something along those lines. And they tell you about it. You can go to that crafter, the craftsman, craftswoman, and say, "Hey, look, this is the feedback that you got from this customer. They absolutely loved, what you created for them." And that's, man, like, people in China aren't getting that, or wherever it is overseas, they're not getting that. Mm-hmm. But you talk about making somebody's day. Like, when I tell, when we get a good review, and they know, like, if a guy in the shop makes a particular ring for somebody, the customer gets notified, this person is making your ring, right? And they get a little bio and stuff like that. So the customer gets a little bit of information about who's making the ring. And when they get the ring and they love it, and they leave a review, they're like, Eric just did a bang up job, or Zach just did a crazy job. Cassie did a fantastic job, whatever. And we give that information back to those crafters, man. Like, they just light up. They love it. And like you said, that means the world to us as the owners, my wife and I, to be able to share that with them. 'Cause it's not just like Rustic in Maine did a great job. No, it's like an individual, a human being, like another American did this. And I think that's awesome. And that's so rare today. And I think it probably used to be a lot more common,
Mm-hmm. And like, another thing that's kind of coming back to is what I'm realizing is, the entire marketing, like sales and just building businesses in general, like we're almost coming back full circle to that feeling of small community, like when you just served people in your town. So now, instead of just serving people in like a 30-mile radius, like now we're just focusing on serving a certain type of person. Like, do you appreciate American made? Are you hardworking? Do you appreciate knives that last forever? Do you have American values? Like, those people, if that's all we did is just focus on them, that's all we need to do. Like, and kind of go back to the old question about about market competition and all this stuff, like in the next couple of months, like, we're going to be getting into the culinary world, and every suit that we've talked to, that tries to give us free business advice is like, that market's too big. It's too saturated. There's too much competition. Everyone thinks an expensive knife is $90 in the culinary world. And like, we don't care. We're not making knives to compete with Bed Bath and Beyond. We're trying to make a knife, so the guy who bought our hunting knife, we want to make a better knife than the chef's knife that he has in his kitchen. And that's all we care about. We're making knives for the people that already have our hunting knife. So when we make a culinary line, the idea is like, our company goal is first blood to last bite. So we have a knife from the hunting field to pretty much like you're sticking, you're cutting your steak. Yep. And that's our goal, is like, we're going to try to fill in that gap for the guy who buys our hunting knife. Like, we want to make sure you have the best knife for the entire process of, if you're going out and killing an elk, or you're paying $40,000 for a ram hunt, or sheep hunt up in Alaska, like, I hope you have good knives, because like I said, it's going to be worth it. You're going to remember those knives. You're going to, everything like that. So, and that's our idea is, so when people talk about, when we get to business advice and, about markets and stuff like that, is like, you kind of have to reverse engineer it. Like, if you make a knife for a certain person, you'll always have a customer, pretty much that way, instead of trying to make a knife for everybody.
Yep. No, and that absolutely makes sense. And we try to do that as well, putting our values out there, just saying like, this is what we stand for. This is what we believe. Every time we do that, doesn't matter if we talk about Jesus, doesn't matter if we talk about human trafficking, doesn't matter if we talk about, if, porn's bad for marriages, whatever the case is, we lose followers. Like, we lose a bunch of followers. And, but that to us, that's like, hey, look, that's just narrowing, that down to who really is, a good fit for our brand. And, and so we kind of recognize that's just part of that strategy, is to really call out the people, that are for you, for that, those values as much as you can. And I think you guys are doing an awesome job with that. I love following along, man, and seeing all the kind of cool stuff that you guys are doing. I can't wait to see that culinary line as well. And I got one last question for you. I've not seen, this may be more of a Josh question. I've not seen a Tonto blade out there, but I'm a big fan of the Tonto with a little bit of serrations or something like that. I don't know if you guys got anything in the works, but Josh might be like, no, that's the worst blade ever. But I love a good chisel point, and so I don't know, just something to think about.
No, it's definitely there's definitely one in the works. So we are actually going to kind of get into a little bit of like the self-defense and tactical line in 2023. We have plans for that, and that's a very popular blade that everyone's been asking for, and that's going to be kind of like our crowbar. Like, our knives right now, like I said, are not crowbars. Like, that's the one thing we want to be very clear about. Our knives are for cutting, but sometimes you just do need one. You do need like that chisel edge. You need something you can stick into, and baton like a heavy piece of wood and stuff like that. So, once we get the first run, I'll have to get one out to you, and you can have to beat it up for us. I
will definitely abuse it. So that's awesome. Well, Brandon, man, look, this has been a great conversation. I've got about 1,000 more questions for you, but we'll have to save it for another time. I guess the best way to get in touch with you guys, MontanaKnifeCompany.com.
Yep, MontanaKnifeCompany.com. Like, we're very active on Instagram. It just seems like that's the best platform for us to talk back and forth. We get hundreds of DMs a day, and they're usually just answered by me or Josh. So don't hesitate, to reach out, ask us any questions. We're always here to like kind of help any other American-made companies grow. So don't, like, seriously, when we say this, like, jump into our DMs, ask us business questions, ask us marketing questions. I love talking about it. Yeah. And that's what I'm here for.
That's awesome, man. I do have another question here. I lied. Do you have any cool, because you're a photographer and we totally didn't get a chance to talk about this at all. Do you have any cool trips planned or any places that you want to go that you're excited about? Because it's awesome that this business that you're doing also crosses over with just amazing places to take pictures. I didn't know if you had anything in the works.
No, it definitely does. Well, I want to get back up to Alaska this year. I definitely have one planned for next year, but it just, Alaska is like this new obsession of mine right now. So I'm going to try to find a way to do some over the counter hunts and just get up there. And then, like, a little bit like talk about, I want to get down. I have this urge to get a knife into Antarctica. So I need to figure out how to get a knife on a boat out of Patagonia.
No, that's awesome, man. Well, and that's part of this adventure that I love too. So just seeing this stuff, this is raw. This isn't like, you guys have a a separate, film crew that's doing like 1,000, like maybe you do, but I'm saying you guys are doing you guys are part of the adventure, like day in and day out, every single piece of it, showcasing that. And so us being able to watch that journey and see you guys grow has just been really, really cool, man. So appreciate your time.
Oh, I appreciate it. And like I said, I'm glad all that's resonating, because like that's what we're trying to push is like Josh and we're up here in Montana, just live in Montana, and we're just trying to build this company from the ground up like they used to.
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, man.
Cool. Thank you.
Well, there you have it, men. I'd love to know what you thought about the episode. Feel free to reach out to me on any of my social media networks. And look, if you got something out of this, make sure another guy does too. Share the episode and make sure it gets in front of the guys that need to hear it the most. Until next time, keep your powder dry, and may a fair wind be always in your sails.